This happened to my sister and I when we were pretty young. I was between 6 and 8, and my sister, she's 2 years younger than me. We lived in a haunted house for about 2 years. It was only very recently that my dad finally told me the reason we moved was actually because of all the activity that was happening in the house. Now, this house we moved into was old. It was built in the 1920s at least and needed work. My dad's a carpenter and had built so many houses over the years. Renovations were nothing new to Mum and Dad. What is it that they say about renos? That it can awaken the ghosts or entities that once were in the house. Now, I don't know the history of the house, and trust me, I have looked it up so many times, and there's not really a lot I can actually find. One thing I have found is that no one lives there for very long, and that quite often the house sells for a very low amount of money. I don't know about you, but that just screams haunted. Now, this house felt off to me, especially the rooms further towards the back of the house. 3 rooms in particular were horrible, and I felt afraid to go into them, even in the daytime. It was so much worse at night. I remember feeling dread every single night the sun went down. My sister and I experienced several things in this house with the paranormal, which I have shared on the channel before, but this one has stayed with us. It is by far the worst thing that ever happened. So this old house had a wine cellar, which was accessed from the backyard. This wine cellar also happened to be directly underneath these rooms that made me feel uncomfortable. The overall layout of the house was off and just felt wrong, like things were in the wrong spot. I was a kid, so I figured it was normal. So we were down there in the cellar playing with our dog Pebbles. Now, for the layout of this cellar, it was fairly big. My dad had knocked out a wall down there too, making it more open. There was an opening on the south side, which was the entrance, and on the west side was a wall of bricks with the decorative holes in them so light would filter in. The cellar itself was divided into 2 rooms. The first section was where we were playing with our dog, and the second, which had a wall with a crawl space or hole in the wall that led into underneath of the house and each room. This was to gain access to the wiring to the heated flooring. So, as I said, we were playing with our dog when all of a sudden, I remember feeling quite uneasy and the need to just look up. And there in the dark area of the cellar stood a large figure. This figure was almost like the outline of a really big man, but I couldn't properly make out any features. Our dog was barking and my sister and I just stared at it. We were terrified. We somehow knew it wasn't a person, and the fear that I felt was like nothing I had ever felt. Even thinking about it now sometimes scares me. I froze and I couldn't move. I couldn't scream. I couldn't say anything. I just stood there with my sister. Now, I have spoken to her recently too, and she said she remembers it having yellow eyes. I remember the height and the outline of its shoulders. The most terrifying part was the way it looked at us. It gave us the most terrifying grin. It was like it wanted to hurt us. We stood there staring at its grin, and to this day, neither of us can get it out of our head. It tilted its head back as if it gestured with its head and then moved its hand like it was trying to beckon for us to follow him further into the darkness of the cellar. My little sister grabbed me and we ran out of there. I don't think I would have been able to move if it wasn't for her. It was the scariest thing that happened to us while we were in that house. What we saw and felt that day scared the living shit out of us. Since then, we've always referred to it as the demon in the cellar. This story takes place in Norway, at a folk high school where I met my girl. The school was built in 1915, and I didn't research the school before going, but if you look on the internet, you'll find it has a rather dark and unexplainable history, from deaths in the school to spirits being heard and seen in the sub-basement. The place had never given me the creeps before, and I'd never been a believer of the paranormal before either. When I first started talking to my girl, she told me that she had a lot of contact with the spirits at the school. She'd been talking to spirits all her life and accidentally summoned demons from her bathroom mirror when she was 8 years old. Anyway, we started living together at the school in January this year, and for the first few months, there was nothing out of the ordinary. It all started one night in early March when we went out at about 9 p.m. for a smoke. She told me before how she'd spoken to spirits at the smoking hut, and the grounds outside, it is very active. While we had the smoke, nothing happened, but on the walk back to the school, maybe 100 meters away, we both felt very uneasy. Just as we got into the light of the front door, she stopped and looked behind us into the dark. She told me something was watching us, and we both looked into the darkness, hoping to see a badger or a fox. After maybe 30 seconds, she pushed me into the school and followed quickly behind me as we heard footsteps on the gravel that quickly turned into a run. Then, for a few more weeks, we had nothing. Towards late March, we unpacked my old PS4 and took it to an empty room on the 3rd floor of the school with a projector to play games undisturbed. The entire 3rd floor has always had a real heavy atmosphere, and I always thought it was because there's a lot of windows, so the sun all day makes it stuffy. Anyway, we played for about 2 hours, and it got to maybe 1900 hours, and I needed to piss. So I went to the tiny toilet at the top of the stairs on the 3rd floor, at the end of a long corridor. As soon as I went into the bathroom, I felt an atmosphere like I'd never felt before. Heavy, sad, the air was bitter and smelt like sulphur. I thought it was the drains, and I was burning a fever almost. I was very uneasy and pissed quickly. Then, when I was washing my hands, I looked at my reflection in the mirror above the sink, and even though I was looking at myself, I also wasn't. There was something different that I couldn't put my finger on. I ignored it and quickly left for the safety of the projector room and my girl. A while later, she went to the same bathroom, but came back seconds later, saying she'd rather hold it in. I asked her what was up. I hadn't told her about my experience yet, and she said all the same stuff as me, with the addition that she got tunnel vision as soon as she opened the bathroom door. We turned on the lights in the room we were in and tried to keep playing, but then things got weirder. There was a room next door to that room that was used by the drama students. All the walls were mirrors, and the floor was the original floor from 1915. From the door leading into that room, we started hearing tapping on glass, footsteps walking around in a loop, and the breaking point for us was a bang on the door into our room. We packed our shit and left. The whole walk back to the bedroom, which was directly under the projector room, felt unnerving. Hairs on the back of our necks standing up, shortness of breath, you know. We got to the room and tried to have a good rest of our evening, laughing, talking, listening to music. But both of us still felt anxious, as if we were being watched. We went to bed, and the next morning woke up both having similar nightmares. My girl dreamt that she was a student at the school when it first opened, but then all her classmates got hollow eyes, and her face started melting as they attacked her. My dream was darkness, with nothing but a disembodied deep voice spelling both of our names over and over again until I woke up. The next night, we went back to the projector room, and similar things happened, only we heard grunting and more bangs on the door. After we walked back to our dorm, we sat in the common room, and I noticed my girl had a bright red mark on her neck, as if something sharp had been dragged across it. At this point, we couldn't be alone, so we had to go to the bathroom together and shower together. The heavy, sad presence and the smell seemed to follow us everywhere. I was never marked, but she was a lot. She came out of the shower one time with what looked like 3 claw marks, bright red, stretching right across her chest and stomach. We decided to cleanse our room, as she is a practicing witch and we're both pagan. We wanted at least one safe spot. We laid a salt line across our doorway and covered the mirror in our room over with a blanket. She did the ritual, but halfway through, even though all doors and windows were closed, the candlelight was blown out quickly. I couldn't bear to look in any reflective surface, and I hadn't slept in a few days at this point. We began walking around the school with protective runes carved into stone. Things calmed down for a while, and one night she decided to go to the bathroom alone, only to run back to me moments later as something started banging hard on the bathroom door as soon as she sat on the toilet. We decided to do another ritual, not for cleansing, but for protection, using our blood and some soil from the grounds. While we were out, at maybe 2300 hours, digging up soil from the ground below a large tree, we both heard heavy and quick footsteps rushing towards us that faded into nothing. We quickly made our way to our room and made our offerings and then went to sleep, hoping for the best. Woke up the next morning to see the salt line had been disturbed, but not fully broken. A good sign that what we were doing is working. Then we didn't experience anything for a while, until the weekend. There was a party at the school, and as me and my girl were walking back to our dorm, we saw several damp footprints starting from nowhere and leading into the old assembly hall where they hung pictures of all the past students. We didn't dare to follow them. We were going to New York a week later, so started wondering if we should contact the spirits, see if they were trying to warn us about something. We went up to the 3rd floor with our Ouija board and some candles, and as we opened the door leading onto the corridor, we were both hit by a blast of boiling hot wind and the smell of sulfur again. We were scared, but contacted them anyway, and ended up speaking to the girl who died in her bed not far from the room we were in. She was a friendly spirit and told us a little about her past. We learned she liked Elvis, so we played Elvis whenever we were near the area she died in. But after about an hour of talking to her, the sulfur smell started again, faintly, and the board started getting quiet. Everything we asked, she responded only with no and can't. Then our candles went out, and we thought, fuck this, and left. After a few nights undisturbed, we uncovered the bedroom mirror and started feeling more comfortable in our room again. Then we went to New York. We came back after nearly 3 weeks away from the place and still felt the presence of whatever was there, but less intensely. The haunting lasted around 24 days. Pretty creepy. Any ideas why we got targeted? Why whatever was with us was trying to harm my girl? My theory is because it was a Christian school and our beliefs might have seemed offensive.